Lancia Aurelia Pf200 Spider 1952. The car body is characterized by its streamlined silhouette, tapered toward the tail, the smooth sides, the raised circular front air intake, which generates the central part of the hood, also circular in cross-section. Evidently there is the influence of the aeronautics of the era. And one per unit, Pininfarina. Offered here is the very first of Pininfarina's Pf200 show cars, built for promotional purposes to generate publicity and never intended for series production, although Pininfarina, as it was then, went on to build a further 6 examples, some open, some closed. The 7 Pf200s were slightly different from one another, although all featured the signature circular front air intake reminiscent of the North American F-86 Sabre jet fighter. The concept made its debut in 1952 when this very car, chassis number 1004, was displayed on the Pininfarina stand at the Turin Motor Show. Italian film star and lover of fine cars, Renato Razzell, real name Renato Ranassi, met Sergio Pininfarina at the 1952 Turin Show and purchased 1004. The side air intakes and 6 exhaust pipes are delightful details, while instead of stowing the soft top behind the seats, like many open cars of the period, Pininfarina arranged for the Pf200's hood to fold down out of sight within the body, thus preserving its streamlined appearance. The Pf200 used the chassis and running gear of the Lancia Aurelia B52, one of the most advanced sporting cars of the era. At this time Pininfarina had yet to supplant Carrozzeria Vignale as Ferrari's coach builder of choice, and much of its best work from this period was on Lancia chassis. One of the most influential designs to emerge from Italy post-WW2, Lancia's classic Aurelia was the first car ever to employ a V6 engine. Designed in wartime by Francesco Di Virgilio and launched at the 1950 Turin Motor Show, the Aurelia B10 was powered by a 1,754cc 60-degree V6 of all-aluminium construction that used overhead valves operated via short pushrods instead of Lancia's traditional overhead camshafts. Unadvanced unitary construction design, the Aurelia retained Lancia's sliding pillar-independent front suspension, first seen on the Lambda, but used a novel semi-trailing arm layout at the rear, another world first. The transmission, too, was unusual, comprising a 2-piece prop shaft and combined gearbox, rear transaxle on which were mounted the inboard brakes, though for once this was not an entirely new departure. The original B10 saloon was joined the following year by the landmark, Pininfarina-styled B20 a fastback 2+2 on a shortened wheelbase which, with its combination of sports car performance and saloon car practicality, can be said to have introduced the Gran Turismo concept to the world. Models with longer wheelbases and larger engines in various states of tune followed. To cater for independent coach builders, Lancia offered the longer wheelbase, 291 cm, B50 chassis, based on B10 mechanicals, and later the B52, which came with the 2.0-liter engine of the B20/B21. In total Lancia built only 98 B52 chassis, the last of which was delivered in 1953. Bought new by famous Italian film star, Renato Ranassi, in 1952 at the Turin Motor Show, 1004 changed ownership in 1958 and a couple of times more between then and 1961. It then seems to have remained in the same family for some 13 years before being bought by the current owner in 1974. A passionate collector of classic cars, with a passion for flying, the current owner is himself a pilot of light aircraft, and during military service also of jets. He found the Lancia in a very poor condition. The car was in pieces, but what caught his eye was the circular front air intake. It looked more like a jet than a car, so you can imagine how his passion for cars and aircraft coalesced in the same object. It was love at first sight. The car was restored in the 1980s by the current owner, who commissioned what were then the best specialists for the job. The painstaking professional restoration took almost 10 years, a period in which the owner and the restorer, Mr. Giancarlo Cappa, became very close friends after doing a lot of research about this Pf200 together. During the restoration and despite the time-consuming research, Some details had to be altered as replacements for some of the unique parts were unobtainable. The restoration notes, receipts for 35 million lirs are on file, an astronomical amount for a restoration if you know that a monthly salary for a worker at that time was around 300,000–350,000 liras. The car is finished in the lovely color scheme of dark gray with a tan interior. Once the Lancia came finally home, the owner put the car in one of the living rooms of the main house, which had ramp access. It was here that the family spent most evenings, especially at weekends. The car stood in the middle of the room as the centerpiece. The owner's rationale was very clear: the Pf200 is a masterpiece and a work of art, which fully justified having it in your main living room. If you are not driving the car, indoors is the best place to enjoy it the most. In the 1990s the engine failed and was removed, and it was then decided to replace it with one of an identical type, no. B21x2700. Unfortunately, the original block was not retained, the importance of matching numbers not being appreciated at that time. Carefully looked after by its long-term custodian, the car is presented today in mainly preserved condition following its 1980s restoration, which is now showing signs of age, especially in the paint. Residing for almost 50 years with the same owner, the car has its own dedicated space in the garage with magnificent Lancia Pf200 badging on the wall. On old Italian plates, the car has featured on posters and in magazines, etc., and comes with an Italian libretto and a quite exceptional history file. The latter contains important correspondence with Pininfarina dating from 1981, which confirms that the car belonged to Renato Razel, that it is the example exhibited at the 1952 Turin Motor Show, and that it was the first of a series of 7 Pf200s of the same type built by hand, each of them different from the others even if only by some small functional or ornamental details, very often requested by the customer. Unfortunately, a fire at the Pininfarina factory destroyed all records of the Pf200s and there are no photographs of this car's interior. The fascinating history file also contains lots of other correspondence, various articles, period photographs, 1970s onwards, restoration photos, 1980s, and the all-important Automobile Club d'Italia document confirming build details and ownership history. With the recent announcement of the rebirth of the Lancia Aurelia model, this unique car will become all the more collectible and is a unique opportunity for any major collector.